Two young quarterbacks went at it on Thursday Night Football. One was victorious. One continues to be a disappointment. We'll talk about both of them. Also, the Eagles-Cowboys matching up. And are the Eagles in trouble if Jalen Hurts continues to have to sit for the regular season? And, of course, the Pick Six here on the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. It's Chris Carter and your boy Q. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. I'm Chris Carter. He's your boy Q of Locked On Steelers and Locked On Raiders. And this is the Friday edition of Locked On NFL. We are on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and especially on YouTube. Like this video if you see it on YouTube. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as all the bonus content. There's a ton of it that comes through here, so subscribe for all the NFL content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is not just a crisis line. It's not just self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online, available to people worldwide. And they have a special offer for our listeners. Get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/lockedon. That's BetterHelp.com/lockedon. Q, how you doing, man? It's freezing out here in Pittsburgh right now.
It is freezing. It's freezing here in Las Vegas, I'll tell you that. But I know it's nothing close to what it is in Pittsburgh. It is really cold. There's actually a lot of games across the NFL this weekend that are going to be like single-digit games. And I know that one in Pittsburgh between the Steelers and the Raiders is going to be one of them. But, yeah, man, it's Week 16 action already. We just saw what happened Thursday Night Football between the Jags and the Jets. But, man, just know the regular season is coming to a close sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Let's talk about that game. The Jaguars win 19-3. I had them pick to win this game. The Jets seem to be falling apart towards the end of the season like we thought they would. But, man, Trevor Lawrence, even in a game where he doesn't throw to any touchdowns, he also doesn't throw any interceptions, 20-31, 229, sustains the Jaguars offense in a cold game, out of their element, because, of course, Jacksonville being in Florida, they're not used to super cold temperatures like that. But he's able to get things going. He gets 51 yards on the ground and scores a touchdown there. The lone touchdown the Jaguars scored all night. On the flip side, Zach Wilson, 9 of 18, 92 yards, no touchdowns and an interception, and was benched in this game. Another down sign for him after being benched for Mike White with his negative comments that he's had with the Jets. And it just seems like these are two franchises that they've both been in complete rebuilds. They've both been working towards and they both got a long way to go. But the Jaguars seem to at least have found their guy in Trevor Lawrence, while Zach Wilson does not. He continues to show that he probably isn't the guy for the Jets.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. I mean, when you look at the Jaguars, and let's give them their props first since they won that game, they look a lot better. Doug Peterson has stabilized the organization, showing how bad Urban Meyer was as a head coach. And Trevor Lawrence is looking like the guy that a lot of people expected him to be when he was drafted number 1 overall. Again, he didn't have stellar numbers on Thursday night, but he played well. He didn't turn the ball over. He looked like he was in control. His teammates are playing for him, with him, rallying around him. That's the complete opposite of what you're seeing with Zach Wilson and the Jets. He had to get benched. Well, he didn't really get benched, but Chris Streveler came in. They said they had a package for him because of the conditions. They wanted to have a little, like almost like a Tebow-esque type package. And since his number was 15, that was the first thing I thought of was Tim Tebow. But he ended up staying in the game because they actually started moving the ball where they weren't moving the ball at all with Zach Wilson. So he's proven that he is not the quarterback for the Jets. I don't even think he's going to be on the team next year. I don't think that they can afford to have him there just because the players aren't playing for him in the locker room. They're not. You can see that even the defense, who's a good defense, is not rallying around Zach Wilson anymore. So he has lost the locker room. That means that they've got to find something else. They've got to move on from him. I guess he could compete for a backup position, but even then, what are you going to get out of him? So I think Zach Wilson's days in New York are numbered, but Trevor Lawrence and the Jaguars, everything is looking positive for them. Matter of fact, they might mess around and win the AFC South at this point.
They could, because the Titans are falling apart.
Yep.
I think that it's really interesting to see Trevor Lawrence coming up because, you know, there were questions about how he was going to be playing with the Jaguars. They had Urban Meyer, but it seems as soon as they've gotten Urban Meyer out of the way, Trevor Lawrence is figuring things out. You know, he didn't throw any touchdowns this game, but the game before that, upsetting the Cowboys, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, upsetting the Titans on the road, 3 touchdowns, no interception. He did have the disappointing loss to the Lions, but upsetting the Ravens, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions against the Chiefs. He's been on a roll, and it does seem like he's finding it. And you're right, it's bigger than just stats. These guys are getting behind him and believing him when he says he's going to do something.
No doubt. And the one thing he has to do better that he did do on Thursday night, he did fumble the ball. Quinnen Williams caused a fumble, and so he did do that, and he has fumbled the ball quite a bit for the Jaguars. That's, I think, the next step is that ball security in the pocket when you're getting sacked, not to lose the ball, because he, again, has fumbled the ball away quite a bit. But besides that, man, I mean, the Jaguars, they got to feel good about the steps that they're taking. They got to feel good about their quarterback, and they got their weapons that they haven't. Don't forget, they made that trade for Calvin Ridley, so we all expect him to come back next year, right? So that's another weapon that'll be added to Jacksonville. I think that they're feeling pretty good about themselves. Most likely they're going to have a playoff trip this year, which is weird to say, and they get a little bit of experience, and then who knows what they'll look like in 2023. But again, everything's got to be looking positive for the Jacksonville Jaguars. My man Amp has got to be feeling pretty good right now.
He does. Absolutely. Amp Wig is definitely feeling it right now with the progress that they've made. And now it's like you're in a position where maybe you can be a little aggressive in the offseason. Even if you don't make the playoffs, you can be like, hey, you know what? Look at the rise. Look at the rise that we had. They've won 3 in a row now. They've won 4 of their last 5, 5 of their last 7. They're feeling it, and they're getting things going. So this could be something. And here's the other thing: even if they don't win the division, they finish second, they're going to have to play all the second place teams next year in the AFC. That might give them a break, because then they don't have to play the Chiefs, then they don't have to play the Bengals, they don't have to play the Bills. Bills. I mean, they might still have to play those teams for other reasons, but they wouldn't be mandated, and that might catch them a couple breaks next season. So certainly on that. But I do agree with you. It's a very good chance that the Jets just might move on from Zach Wilson now. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to be bad as a player, but if you're not playing well and your guys hate you, you don't got much of a chance to stick around.
No, you don't. And so the question is, the Jets have a really good defense. That's clear, right? They have a nice young defense. They have some nice young weapons on offense. They got to find a trigger man. I don't think it's Mike White. I know it's not Joe Flacco. Clearly, it's not Zach Wilson. It's not Chris Streveler, so, I mean, where do you go, right? I mean, you've got to make a decision. If you're the Jets, you got to go all in. I don't think you go and draft another young guy. I think he could be that guy. So maybe you go out and get a veteran, maybe a guy like Jimmy G is your next quarterback next year. I'm not saying that he's the end-all, be-all, but he's a lot better than what they have right now, and they could win some games with Jimmy G, especially on the strength of that defense. Hell, look what San Francisco's doing with their third-string quarterback in Brock Purdy. They're still finding ways to win games on the basis of the defense and a strong run game. The Jets have a strong run game as well, especially when Breece Hall comes back next year from that torn ACL. So I think the approval meter is looking up for the Jets, except for the quarterback position.
No, I agree with that. I do think that the Jets are a team that, like the Niners, I think that there's a pendulum swinging back a bit for the NFL. And I've talked about this on Locked On Steelers, but I think that there's coming for a time for teams to be great on defense and great at running the ball. We've thought that the NFL has been just moving to pass happy. Everyone just throw the ball, air raid. Don't think about running the football. But now I think that all the defense is gearing up to stop that. Is going to open the door up for all these offenses that want to get bigger up front. You see what the Niners are doing right now. The more that they continue to build this way, I think that they're going to pave sort of the path for the next generation of, the next 5 or 6 years, how offenses could start to take over games without having to be that proficient in the passing game. You still need to protect the football and make plays with the passing game, but being able to have a more of a balanced look that relies on the run and a defense that keeps points off the board and can control games. I do think the Jets might have that. And you're right. Jimmy Garoppolo, he's shown that, he doesn't need to, he can manage games and not have to throw a whole bunch of points up on the board they did when they beat the Packers last year in the playoffs. He's good at that situation. I think that's an astute observation from you that he might be a great fit for the Jets. We're going to talk about
got those San Francisco ties, right? Coach Saleh's got those San Francisco ties right there. So, I mean, it all just really comes together really smoothly. So it just makes sense that would be the best option, at least right now, for the New York Jets, is going out and getting Jimmy G.
I agree with that. We got to talk about a big matchup this weekend and how it could impact the entire playoff race. Eagles, Cowboys. It's one of my favorite rivalries that doesn't involve the Steelers to watch. We'll talk about that and with what's going on with Jalen Hurts in just a minute here on the Locked On NFL podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about Turo. Turo, of course, is the world's largest car sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the US, Canada, and the UK. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. Get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. Find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Ditch boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. This episode is also brought to you by the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. It's the holidays, so you may go out drinking with some friends, and sometimes a few drinks can become a few too many. As the evening comes to an end and the people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride, but you're like, nah, you know what? I got this. I live really close, and I can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you might get pulled over? And if you are pulled over, what's the worst that can happen? Your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, or you might kill somebody. You get the point. Everybody knows the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers out there right now are looking for impaired drivers on our roads to save lives. So if you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Keeping it rolling here on the Locked On NFL podcast. Q, let's talk about this Eagles-Cowboys matchup.
Yeah.
Saturday afternoon. It's gonna be a fun one. The Eagles, though, of course, without Jalen Hurts, the Cowboys have been on the rise now that Dak Prescott has been able to get to be back into the fold. I think the Cowboys win this game, Q. We'll get to this more in the pick six that we do in the third segment. But I also think that the Eagles are kind of fine with the way they're built as long as Jalen Hurts can get back like a game or two, get back. If he gets back week 18 and has one game before the playoffs, because they're most likely going to be the 1 seed and get a bye. But if Jalen Hurts is off for basically 3 straight weeks, that might be a thing that hampers their chemistry on offense, and you would not want to be caught slipping at home in your first round of in the playoffs after earning that bye, and then he's sat for the last 3 games.
Right, exactly. I mean, that's the one big concern if you're the Eagles and Jalen Hurts, right? You want to know what the intermediate medium is, right? Like that middle even, whatever they want to call it. It's just, how much rest do you want him to get so he's healthy, but then how much do you want to make sure he stays in that rhythm of the offense? The worst thing would be for him to come back in the playoffs and not be on his A game, be a little rusty, and all of a sudden they take an L, and then they're sitting back wondering in the offseason what could have been. So I hate this, that Jalen's going to miss games for multiple reasons. I think that that's automatically going to make the voters go ahead and give the MVP to Patrick Mahomes. Not that Mahomes doesn't deserve it, but I think Jalen Hurts has been just that stinking good for the Eagles this year. Really was hoping he was going to get the MVP, but with missing action, I just don't think that they'll do it. And I think that there's a handful of folks that don't want to give it to him anyway, and now this is kind of their bailout. Like, yeah, told you, right? I mean, I heard people telling me that, even if Gardner Minshew was the quarterback, they'd be right where they are. And that's not the truth. That is the farthest thing from the truth. And that just kind of lets me know that there's still a big handful of people that don't believe in Jalen Hurts. And he's gone out there and all he's done is proven how good he is. The team has 1 loss on the season, and he didn't even have a bad game in that 1 loss. I mean, it's incredible. So I'm hoping that he only misses like maybe this game against the Cowboys. It's kind of funny, Chris, that, when the Cowboys went to Philadelphia, they had Cooper Rush as their quarterback. Philadelphia is returning to Dallas to play the Cowboys, and now they're going to have Gardner. Like, hey, you played us with your backup, we'll play you with our backup. So there you go. But I think that in this game, man, Philadelphia, they can, Gardner Minshew is a decent backup. He's not a guy that I'd want them, to be running the offense for a long time or anything, for multiple days or multiple games. Just only, 1, 2 probably at the max. I think it's very important that Jalen comes back and gets a little bit of regular season action.
No, I'm right with you. I think and again, it's not just Jalen; it's everyone around Jalen. Because what the Eagles have done, they're part of the model with the whole with the Niners. Because Jalen Hurts, even though he's on an MVP pace right now, he's not a guy that you pick. He's a 2nd-round quarterback. He's a guy that you picked after the fact that could kind of put it all together. But he's a piece in the middle of a really big puzzle that they've put together.
Really good piece.
And exactly, he's a really good piece. I'm not trying to downplay him, but the Eagles' ultimate strength, and I think this is where people sometimes go with the MVP talk, is that they have two really impressive fronts. Their offensive line bullies people, their defensive line bullies people, and then everything kind of builds off of that. And Jalen Hurts has done a great job in doing his job around that. And I'm with you. I think that he deserves the MVP for how he's played up to this point. I just also think that the Eagles, they're part of the example. When I was talking about, the Niners and how they're part of that model, I think the Eagles are another example of how a lot of teams, if you dominate the trenches, you don't need a Patrick Mahomes / Josh Allen, top first round pick who can launch the ball 60 yards through the air and run all over the place over here. Jalen Hurts can run and he can do all that, but he does it in a smart way. And this is why I loved him in college. I think he's a heck of a leader. And sometimes you just need guys like that who can lead well-constructed rosters. I just think that they do want, like you said, they do want to get him back at least the week before the bye so that they can have him. Everyone gets settled around him. They're not coming in cold in the playoffs. And then, some upstart team like the 49ers comes in there and catches them off guard as they're trying to get their legs back under them with Jalen and trying to feel comfortable again. And then all of a sudden they're down 17 points in the second half. And the Eagles are trying to play catch up, and then their great season goes to waste.
Right, exactly. And the other thing about this is the Eagles still need one win to be the number one seed, right?
True.
So, I mean, they got to be able to seal the deal. So you want to get it sooner rather than later. I wouldn't expect that it would come this week against the Cowboys. I figure Dallas will have enough juice. And again, we'll talk about it more coming up in the next segment. But figure they have enough juice to get this victory over Gardner Minshew. So does he get it next week? Because if not, then all of a sudden you're looking at like, hey, man, got to get that dub. You don't want to not be the number one seed, right? You've had too good of a season not to be that number one seed. So that's very important as well. Again, I think Gardner Minshew is a good enough backup to get it done, to go and pick up one victory. I just don't want him being the quarterback for the long stretch. So the Eagles, Nick Sirianni and company have a decision to make on how long they think that they can afford to sit Jalen. What's the risk reward, right? And it's a fine line, and that's why they get paid the big bucks. And we sit back and talk about it because, man, if they make the wrong decision, again, they could be sitting in the offseason wondering, what the hell just happened to our fantastic season? And that's the last thing we want to happen.
Definitely. You could think a lot of the time. Heck, Eagles fans, I think, felt like that a lot in the 2000s in the Andy Reid era where they had some great seasons that just fell apart with a couple moments. And I think that's what's special about the NFL playoffs is how, in baseball, basketball, and hockey, you can mess up for a couple games in the playoffs, but ultimately you still most of the time get 7 games to kind of figure things out and get back out there and play your best games. But in football, you mess up for a quarter, it can mean your entire season goes away. I think it's why the NFL playoffs is so special. But I think it's going to be interesting to see because if they can hold off, if they can win one more game, they have the Saints at home next week and the Giants at home after that. You think that they could be able to win at least one of those games. But the Giants, they've been upstarts. The Saints, if it's Gardner Minshew next week, maybe you are talking about it. Maybe they are looking at a Week 18 matchup against the Giants at home, an NFC East rival.
Man.
It's gonna be crazy.
That'd be sexy, man. That'd be good. That'd be fantastic TV. That might be having the flex to Sunday Night Football, right?
Absolutely.
That would be. I wouldn't actually be mad at that. That'd be pretty fun. That would remind me of what we saw last year, where it was the Raiders and the Chargers. You remember Week 18, Sunday Night Football, last game of the season. Steelers were hoping that the Raiders.
I remember.
Well, you remember, right? There was so much riding along the line. So maybe we could see something like that. That would be a lot of fun, a lot of drama. And, the NFL would love that.
They certainly would. The Eagles and the Cowboys play again. I love how much these franchises hate each other. Like, that's the thing. If the Cowboys win this game, they're going to be like, yeah. I went to Chain University, the first HBCU. We were just outside of Philly, but there were a lot of Cowboys fans because you know how Cowboys fans are. Like, they could be from DC and they're like, yeah, I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm like, how? But
right.
But at the same time, whenever Eagles Cowboys was on, you had to find the lounge on campus where the most fans was going to pile up because Eagles and Cowboys fans were going to yell at each other, hate each other. You just get there with some popcorn and a drink and just be sitting there and being like, "Ooh, he talked about your mama." Like how's that going? So
right.
I can't wait for all the vitriol that's going to come from this game, and I so hope we get a third game in the playoffs because Eagles Cowboys playoff games. just so good to watch. We'll get down to all the pick six games. We got 6 games to break down with all the betting odds and ends here on the Locked On NFL podcast. So don't go anywhere. It's Chris Carter and your boy Q on the Friday edition of the Locked On NFL podcast. But first, we got to talk to you guys about betonline.net. BetOnline is your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Go there to check out. They have all the latest sports developments, league reviews, news, including leading up to the NFL playoffs. Who's going to make the playoffs? Who's going to play big in these last few games? You can find out all the odds and ends. We'll go over a lot of those odds and ends for these upcoming Week 16 matchups here. But they also do the NHL, NBA, college sports, and so much more. Check out BetOnline right now. They also have a ton of podcasts for you to learn about that stuff. So go to BetOnline, your continued source for all your sports wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to their website today. Use your mobile device to learn more of the trends in the action when you visit BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to the Locked On NFL podcast. It's the Friday edition with Chris Carter and your boy Q. And, of course, it's time for the Pick Six, where we pick the 6 games that we think are the most interesting to be looking at betting-wise this weekend. Of course, that's brought to you by BetOnline, your number one source for all your betting stats and sports information. Q, let's get right into it. There are some very interesting games. Just a reminder for everybody, most of the games happen Saturday. There's only a few Christmas Day games. You got the Broncos, Rams, the Giants, the Packers, Dolphins, the Buccaneers, Cardinals, and then you have Monday Night Football, Chargers, Colts. But most of our games are going to be – actually, all of our games are going to be Saturday games this week. Let's start off with one that I think is more interesting when you look at the betting lines for it, and that's the 7-7 Seahawks at the 11-3 Chiefs. When you look at BetOnline to get the Chiefs are favored by 10 points here, Q. I don't know about that, because the Seahawks, Geno Smith has been on his revenge tour this year. I don't think the Seahawks win this game, but I think they keep it within single digits, because I think they can put up some points. And we just saw the Chiefs struggling with the Texans last week.
Yeah, and it's funny, and I have to admit it, I'm going to cheat on this one a little bit. Of course, I do Locked On Bets with Lee Sterling each and every day, and this is one of the games that we talked about on the show for Friday as well. And he said that, man, the Chiefs are one of the worst covering teams in the NFL. I mean, they don't cover the spread very well, and double digits is a lot. And like you said, man, you brought up a good point about the Texans and the fact that the Chiefs struggled with the Texans, barely won that game. So I do believe they'll beat Seattle in this one, but that double digits, man, 10 points is way too much. So just, looking at the betting lines of it, I think that the Seattle Seahawks will be able to cover, so you can roll with them. But ultimately in this one, I feel like the Chiefs are going to win it. It's supposed to be about 4 degrees, single digit at kickoff with this game. So this is another one similar to another game we'll talk about later. No thanks, man. It's going to be too cold in the house for me. So there you go. Kansas City, I think, does get the victory, though.
I'm right with you there. Let's go to our next game here. Also a 1:00 in Eastern time for Christmas Eve. Giants at Vikings. Giants 8-5-1. Vikings 11-3, coming off that ridiculous win, 33-point comeback. I was covering a basketball game during that time. Yeah. I saw them go down 33-0 at half. Then I started writing my story in the middle of the game because Pitt was winning their basketball game. And then I look up and I'm like, what do you mean they're down by a touchdown? And then all of a sudden they get that win in crazy fashion. I'm very intrigued in this game, but BetOnline, when you look at the numbers here, favors the Vikings by 4.5 points. I think that's a healthy spread there. Yeah. But I'm going with the Vikings at home. I think they're going to be riding high after this. The Giants, they've had their ups and downs. I think that they're still trying to show that they are a good team. They're not just a team that kind of fell into their position. They got a huge win over the Commanders last week, and it broke a 4-week streak of not winning their games. They lost to the Eagles, tied the Commanders, lost to the Cowboys, and lost to the Lions. But now they face the Vikings. They're in Minnesota. I just think this is a game that the Minnesota Vikings, they're going to have the momentum and carry on for the win and get the points.
Yeah, I think that Minnesota's going to be feeling good about themselves after coming back from, being down 33 at half against the Colts. But, they were down 33 at half against the Colts.
True. Right?
That's still a problem for me. That's still something that resonates with me. Like, wait a minute, you were still down 33. You had a lot of mistakes, block punts, fake punts, just turnovers. A lot of bad play led to the Colts, of all team, being up 33 points at halftime. Of course, they collapsed. I just still don't believe in the Vikings, man. I think they're a team with a good record, but not a good team. That makes sense, right?
No, I agree with that.
I'm going to ride with the Giants in this one. I
Ooh.
know that it's going to be kind of rolling the dice. It's really, kind of going out there on the limb because for all purposes that you broke it down and the way that you said it, the Vikings should win this game. I just don't trust them yet. And it's crazy to say a team that has 11 wins, double-digit wins, you don't trust. But that's where I'm at with the Minnesota Vikings. So they're going to have to show me again. I'm going to roll with the G-Man in this one.
I think it's really interesting because if they had lost that game to the Colts, it would have been very embarrassing, but it also would have been their second loss in a row. And then all of a sudden, we're talking about, are the Vikings slipping? Are they done? Are they finished?
Yeah.
Are they falling off a cliff? Is this the real Vikings? So it's crazy how one comeback and an overtime win can change everything about how people want to talk about you. I do think you're right. People should be susceptible to this team. They should not be banking on them. So I'm a little cautious with picking them, but I still ride with them because I also don't believe in the Giants. But Let's move along here. Another 1:00 game, the 10-4 Bengals, who clinched a playoff spot with the loss of the Jets this weekend. They face the 7-7 Patriots. The Bengals in this game, excuse me while I'm scrolling through the Bet Online numbers here.
So am I.
Yeah, the Bengals are only favored by 3, which made me go, at first, Hugh, because the Bengals have been playing really good football. The Patriots just got embarrassed with the way that they lost to the Raiders last week. Also, I got to ask, what was that like covering that game, Q?
That was incredible. I still don't really know what I saw. And you know what the rules are in the press box. You got to be really quiet. There's no cheering, any of that. And all those press box rules be damn, man. Everyone was like, what in the hell did we just see? Literally, while the play was happening, I reached over and grabbed the girl that was next to me, her arm, and I was just like, what is this? What is this? She just looked up, and it was so funny because she was actually looking down at her phone, so she was happy I did that because she actually got to see the play live, and it was crazy, man. Nobody understood what the hell we just saw, so it was wild. Something I've never seen before and something I'll probably never ever see again.
Yeah, that was wild when just that, and the stiff arm from Chandler Jones back to that was just iconic. But this Patriots team, I do feel has to be reeling at this point. The Bengals team, they're not reeling. They're actually on a roll right now. They've won 6 straight, including 5 since the bye week. They just beat the Buccaneers in a comeback from last week. They're on the road. The only thing I think that the Patriots might have over the Bengals is if that run game gets going. If Ramondre Stevens and that offensive line starts bullying the Bengals, they could try to limit how many chances that Joe Burrow and that offense gets on the field. But I'm still taking the Bengals, and 3 points. I think that's the perfect amount of points for me to say, you know what? They'll find a way to win by a little bit more than 3 in this game.
Yeah, the Patriots offense stinks. Like you said, Ramondre Stevenson, I mean, he is the guy. He ran for 170 plus yards against the Raiders, did a fantastic job, and did everything he could to help the Patriots win, but they couldn't throw the ball into the ocean, man. I mean, they looked bad, right? I mean, they made a lot of bad decisions. First and goal at the 1-yard line, they threw the ball 3 times. Didn't make any sense. They called timeout on themselves when they had just scored a touchdown. I mean, they iced themselves. I mean, there's so many bad decisions, and then you saw how the game ended. So I just don't believe in the Patriots team. I think that it's a very un-Bill Belichick type team, very undisciplined. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They did a lot of things on Sunday that made me scratch my head and wonder, who am I actually watching? So, yeah, I think Cincinnati, one way or one how, they'll find a way to win this game. I don't have any faith in the Patriots.
Let's move along to Commanders at Niners. Commanders, disappointing loss for them to the New York Giants. Would have really put them in the driver's seat to be a playoff team right now. They're 7-6-1, but the Niners have been on a roll. They have now won 7 in a row to get to this point. Everyone was wondering, and this is with Brock Purdy still at quarterback, man. Like, this is crazy right now. And they're playing really good football. They just beat the Seahawks 21-13. I see no reason for them to lose this game. Looking at the spread here on Bet Online, they're favored by 7. That's a good amount of points. I have a tough time there because they don't score. I don't think they're going to score a lot of points. I think this is a stuff. So, I
probably score.
Their defense, I can see their defense scoring.
Yeah.
I'll take the Commanders just for the 7 points because I think this is like a 4 or 5 point game. But I'm absolutely thinking the Niners are going to win this one.
I'm going to roll with the Niners in it. I mean, they haven't given me any reason not to, right? Brock Purdy's done just enough to make me feel like he can continue to guide the ship and let the defense in the run game do all the heavy lifting. And so I think they're going to continue to do that. I know the Commanders have been a decent story. And, of course, the NFC East has been a hell of a story in general. But I just think the 49ers are too much, man. They are a very strong team, and unless Brock Purdy just has some kind of crazy day where he just wets the bed or whatever, I think that there's no doubt that they get this dub, and I think they win by about 10 points in this one. So I don't have a lot of faith in the Commanders. I'm gonna go all the way up right there with the 49ers, and I'll probably be the game that they let me down. But there's that.
There is that. Let's get back to this game. Eagles Cowboys. This, could be said the game of the week, just with the rivalry, the intensity of both teams. The Cowboys favored by 5 with Gardner Minshew as the starter. I'm going to take that and the points. We talked about, we both think the Cowboys are winning this week. I think this is a week because, again, these two teams don't like each other. These two franchises don't like each other. They're rivals. And the Cowboys, they want to win this one, I think, to kind of set a good tone heading into the playoffs. Like, hey, we're going to be here. And when we come back to play y'all, it's going to be rough. And you better have Jalen Hurts when that happens. But, yeah, I think that the Cowboys win. They run the football very well. And that's the thing. They do enough of the things well that the Eagles also do well that I think it balances out. And with Dak Prescott, they'll push themselves over the hump.
Well, I'll tell you right now, they better win this game, right? I mean,
that's a good point.
Gardner Minshew is a decent backup, good backup even, but there's no reason why the Cowboys shouldn't win this game. So if they want to be taken seriously in the playoffs, you go and win this game. This is one of those that you look at the schedule, you say, okay, this is one that they should win now that the backup quarterback's in. If they don't, then all of a sudden I got a lot more questions. I already questioned Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, because I just don't like the play calling, especially when Dak's in there. It's pass, 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 pass. When, like you mentioned, they got the dogs in the backfield. They've got Zeke. They've got Tony Pollard. They've got a strong run or a strong defense. Stick to the recipe. Don't get too cute. But Kellen Moore, for some reason, gets too cute. I'm going to roll with him on this one, think that Mike McCarthy's going to sit him down, have a come to Jesus meeting and be like, hey, man, don't get off script. Do what we do and go get the W. Don't make it more difficult than it has to be. So I'm going to roll with the Cowboys, but I'll tell you what, if they let us all down and they lose the game or they don't cover the spread, man, I'm just going to have a lot of questions moving forward when it comes to Dallas. But I'm going to go ahead and trust them this week. We'll see how that works out.
Absolutely. We could talk about this all day, but I do think the Cowboys are going to win. Let's get into the game that you and I are going to be involved in. It's Steelers, Raiders, both teams 6-8. This has not been the either team really hoped for, but they're both trying to fight to stay in the hunt, as they say on all the NFL shows, for the AFC playoff race. It's Saturday Night Football, Christmas Eve, 8:15 in Pittsburgh, the North Shore, Acrisure Stadium, aka the formerly known as Heinz Field. It's going to be, I think this is going to be one of those old school games. Q, you and I talked about this on our crossover Thursday. I was going to pick the Raiders for this game because I thought that the balance of Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams would be too much. But, man, when Franco Harris passed away, hearing all these Steelers talk about it, like Franco Harris, people who are uninitiated to this rivalry, of course, caught the immaculate reception, often regarded as the greatest play in NFL history. It's the legend that sparked the 70s Steelers. It was their first ever playoff win, and then they would just go on to win 4 Super Bowls after that in a 6-year span. And that built the Steelers dynasty and the Steelers franchise to be one of the NFL crown jewels. Franco Harris, for people who don't know, has been every bit involved with the Steelers franchise since he retired in the early 80s. He's been all over the place. He introduced Kenny Pickett at the NFL draft, introduced Pat Freiermuth, and both of those guys talked about how they've talked to him. They've talked to him and been like, hey, like, we love this guy. Like, like, this guy is there for us. Najee Harris said the same thing. Cam Hayward, who's been on the team for over a decade now, talked about how he's always been around and there's so much love for that man. And when he passed away on Wednesday, this team, I think, has taken on an extra burden to say, hey, you know what? We want to win for this guy. And that doesn't always carry you throughout the entire game. Right. But I do think there's a special fired up. They were going to honor Franco Harris because this is the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. He was getting his jersey retired on Saturday. All of this is just a lot of some of those intangible momentum things that I think favor the Steelers, get them a boost and get them a lead early in the game. And the Steelers team is a team that has to play from ahead to win. And I think that's why I'm picking them to win. They're favored by 2.5 on BetOnline.
I'll tell you right now, this is a game that I thought was going to be very close, and I still do feel like it's going to be really close. Same. But as you mentioned, when Franco Harris passed, one of the first things I thought of, and I don't mean to sound, ugly about it, but one of the first things I thought of was, oh, those guys are going to be fired up, ready to play. Yep. Those guys are going to, just for every reason that you just mentioned, that's one of my first thoughts that I had. Not obviously, the condolences to the family and lost a legend. And that dude is NFL royalty. I had an opportunity to meet him and talk with him, and he was a great dude and a hell of a player. And he's got mutual respect from the Raiders, the organization, players, fans, all over. So all the love goes out to the Harris family and the Pittsburgh community. But I did think, as far as the game goes, those guys are going to be fired up, amped up. I don't know if that can resonate throughout the whole course of the game, or if the Raiders have to just weather the storm and then do their best. But I would not be shocked at all if the Steelers get that victory and do it for old 32, do it for Franco. And there's a hell of a celebration there at Heinz Field on Saturday. So as much as I'd like to see the Raiders get the victory, because I want to see them get that late season push and see what they can do, see if they can make this interesting down the stretch. I just feel like that there's a lot to overcome, a lot of elements, the elements outside with the cold and the elements of Franco Harris and that legend there at Heinz Field, and not Heinz Field anymore, but that's what it was. So that's what I'm sticking with.
I hear you, man. It's been Three River Stadium. It's been Heinz Field. Now it's Acrisure Stadium, although the Three River Stadium is a whole different thing. But still, right. It's gonna be there's gonna be so much fanfare there. Fans have been like huddling around the Franco Harris statue that's at the Pittsburgh airport when you come down. There's a memorial where he caught the Immaculate Reception right outside the parking lot of Acrisure Stadium, where people are probably going to have been dropping flowers at. I think it's going to be one of those weeks where, like, the Steelers, there's really a Steelers family thing that comes into play with some of this stuff. And I think it's going to be on display, and you're going to see them come out fired up in this game. And that might be just enough to help them get the push to win against the Raiders. There you have it. There's our pick 6, all of our 6 games here. We hope that you guys have a happy holidays. I hope that you're going to, if you're celebrating Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate in these holidays, we hope that you do it safely. Stay bundled up. It's cold all around the country right now. Colder here than it is in Las Vegas for Q. But we hope that everyone's great. We'll be back next Friday breaking things down as we're getting ever so closer to the playoffs. Stay here on the Locked On NFL podcast that gets you ready for those playoffs, see if your team is going to make it. Back next week again from Chris Carter and your boy Q. Happy holidays. We'll see you next week.